questions going? Well, technically, I was born somewhere like right here. I had a freak incident. They've never seen a baby with that much hair in their life. So, no, I've never had short hair. So the tattoos on my fingers represent each day of creation. So you have days 1 through 6, and then Alpha and Omega. And I got these because I forgot the order. Like anytime I would sit, people say, "Hey, what happened on the third day?" Like, was it fish? Was it trees? I forget. So I just permanently put them on my fingers. So like for instance, people are like, "Oh, what happened on the 5th day?" I said, "That's when we fish." I'm pretty decent at doing voices. I do love myself a good corn dog. Here's what haggis in my big. For fun, I give all the best big corn. Apples. Something that's on the database. That's right. There's been on the road. It's me, Mario. Michael Kane. Oh, I can't get it out. Oh, little Timmy next door, he has a fine looking cornfield. What are you eating in here? They say hold fast, so it's like hold fast to what is good. Hold on to good things, like puppies, butterfingers, grilled cheese, sometimes turtles if they're small enough. Yeah. So I come into a room and listen to Shania Twain on repeat, and the first thing that came to my head was write it down. Next day, make a video. Nothing gets my brain going like listening to good old Shania. So I would choose Bob Ross because he has many talents, and his voice calms my spirit, and he makes me happy. I miss you, man. I never met you, but I wish I did. Happy trees. So this is what you do. You walk up to them, you gently grab their face, and you say, "Hey, friend, you got hair growing out of a mole in your face. It's freaking me out." Just like that. If you fart in public, typically it's not on purpose, but usually certain things just release the gas within me, like darkness, tickling, bean burritos, tripping, coughing, sneezing.
So you like fart when you sneeze or when other people sneeze?
I fart both when I sneeze and other people sneeze. You have to do that, man. Religious or not, we all deserve a laugh every now and then, but you should follow Jesus because it's pretty great. My favorite part about being a youth pastor consultant is that now I have a lot of friends, like a lot of friends, and like growing up I never had friends, so it's pretty special. Yeah. Yes, I do agree with everything the Bible says to the T, everything, because it's God's inspired word. So why wouldn't I agree with it? Even though some stuff in the Bible is super hard to live by, and sometimes I don't want to do them, I still do because I love Jesus in the Bible and everything says. Scripture. Man, I never really thought about running for president. How crazy would that be? Carl, cool Carl, president of the U.S. of A. Yeah, that's crazy. That's a great question. Fantastic question. You can go to coolcarl.com. All the shirts are pretty cheap because we make them ourselves. And they're super soft, super comfortable. So go buy shirts at coolcarl.com. Because every shirt you buy proves to the guys here at Sunday Cool that I add value. And if you don't buy a shirt, then I have no value. Not slip into a dark, deep abyss with no escape. food.
Okay.
Maybe befriend a raccoon.
Trash panda. Trash panda.
CoolCarl.com. All right, y'all. This has been a Q&A with Carl, me. If y'all enjoyed the video, make sure to like and subscribe. If not, no worries. It'll just hurt my feelings.
Yeah. I want to get the bear fruit one too. Next time. Next time. There we go. Okay. And we talked about more things. Can't finish talking about that again right now. So I've got shirts. Who here hasn't gotten their shirt yet?
Cricket.
I know Tucker has it, but he's about to spit his water for some reason. I don't know why.
You're gonna come out his nose? Swallow it.
What was so funny about what you
It's the face that she made.
Oh. I was gonna say, I was like,
What's your face?
Just t-shirts.
Was it just
You,
that? It probably was.
you just had a face.
yeah. Especially that t-shirt.
I wanted to watch
Just
it.
say they have this logo on them. Remember, you just gotta memorize happy 2819, and that's it.
Therefore, go.
Yeah. Good job. Does anybody have their G-Now packets to give back to me?
Nope.
I figured.
I lost mine.
You lost it?
Of course
You
you
get another
did. I did too.
one? You probably lost it because you left it on that chair. I threw one away that was left on that chair. Okay, put it in your Bible so you don't lose it. You didn't want to? Or you lost it?
Eat it. One Bible, eat it.
You want one? Okay. You didn't want So, remember, this is Georgetown's deal. They have it going on. They're inviting just pretty much everybody in Montreal that wants to go. I got to get on their idea train when it comes to blasting the.
Youth leaders is our school, like, receptionist.
Oh, yeah, that doesn't help. Well, it doesn't help me. But anyway, I'm sure they'll. What?
Miss Farrington.
Is that who the short haired girl is?
Yeah.
That sits at the desk at the middle school?
Yes.
Okay.
The guy who's leading, like Jason Brown, who's leading the youth department right now, is in charge of IT.
He's not the most interesting person. He's nice.
No, I mean, he's nice and all. He's
Yeah.
awkward to talk to.
We're on
Yes,
YouTube
he
right
is.
now, say hello.
Yes,
Hello.
YouTube Live is streaming right now.
Hi.
If you like Hackman Church at the Uprising on YouTube, you will be able to tune in on Sunday mornings and Wednesday nights that you can't make it for whatever reason.
Hi,
Or-
YouTube.
I'm also gonna try to start, I don't know, I might start doing little
Is
videos
anybody
here and there
watching?
and just being goofy. Huh?
Yeah, anybody watching?
I don't know if YouTube actually tells you if anybody's watching your live.
We
I guess it would.
I think
It probably does. I would doubt that if anybody's not here right now, they're probably not watching right now.
they'll watch later.
Probably.
We should do like one time on a Wednesday night or something. We could do like a challenge or something.
This coming Wednesday night, by the way, is gonna be a game night, because we're actually gonna wrap up all of our message that we've been talking about this morning. And so in between messages, I like to do big fun stuff and things like that.
Are we gonna do the mac and cheese challenge again or something different?
By the way, if you still want to add any of that spicy ghost pepper stuff or Carolina Reaper, you want to sprinkle it on something on Wednesday nights, go for it. Have fun. Hurt yourselves.
Hurt yourself.
Hurt yourselves. Just to mention, the one big thing that I do want to talk about, just to make sure that y'all have this on your radar, so you know it's coming up and you know I'm talking to you about it. Super Bowl Sunday, which is February 2nd?
Yeah.
Or 1st. Because the next Sunday, oh yeah, no, yeah, it should be the 2nd. It should be the 2nd.
It was February. I don't.
February 2nd at 2 p.m. So we gather together, food drive happens. We all go to Brookshires. All your parents will probably go to Brookshires. Sweet. Everybody will go to Brookshires and buy a bunch of canned food to help stock the pantry at the resale barn and at Visions of Sugar Plums. And then after that's when all of y'all come in and we'll all meet at the resale barn and or Visions of Sugar Plums, which is right across the street from there. And unload the trucks for them and bring it into the pantries. The more of us that are there, the faster it will go. So we could either be there for, I don't know, an hour or 30 minutes or 20 minutes, because y'all pack like 300 something Meals on Wheel boxes in 45 minutes. So y'all crank those out.
You know what I thought? Meals on Wheels were? I thought they're actual boxes with wheels. And they're like remote control
Dude, you
cars.
know what it is now though, right? You know what it is now, right? What is it?
A box.
Okay, but what for?
Meals.
For shut-ins, for people that for some reason can't leave their house very easily because of like they're disabled or they're elderly or whatever. Meals on Wheels takes meals to those people and delivers them to the house and says, hey, you can't get out, so here's a hot meal for you. That's what they do.
You
That's,
should order pizza.
oh yeah, but you gotta live on pizza every single day of your life.
Yeah.
Breakfast, lunch,
that's
and dinner.
And if they can't get out of the house, they probably can't work. And if they can't work, they don't have money to order pizza.
Exactly. Meals on Wheels is free.
And government disabilities, not that much children.
Yes. So, okay. Why is there a blank slide?
I don't know.
Oh, fair. I don't know why it was blank.
You changed it to blue.
Was it blue? No, it's not blue.
Yes, it is.
Yeah, it's very dark maybe.
It is kind of bluish, isn't it?
Yeah, it's
Keep
color
that.
your shirt.
It's good looking.
Color your shirt. I thought it was green. I thought the shirt was green and then.
So we're gonna go ahead and pray over our session today, and then we can pray for prayer requests specifically and stuff like that. Jesus, Lord, we thank you so much for bringing us all together this morning. God, I ask, Lord, that I would be a vessel for you today. Lord, that you would speak through me to the youth, and Father, that their ears and hearts and eyes would be open to hearing your truth. Father, please guide us as we enter into your worship this morning, and in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay. So we're wrapping up
Taylor Swift's cousin.
Taylor Swift's cousin.
Come on.
Jonathan Swift,
See?
Seeing the Invisible. What we're wrapping up today is this idea that, hey, it's really hard to see God in this physical world, and that's always a challenge, right? Because we are physical beings right now. We have a soul, but we can't feel and touch our soul, just like I can feel and touch everything else. And so when it comes to spiritual matters, that's really hard for us to wrap our minds around. That's really hard for us to imagine spiritual things. It's really hard for us to realize we can relate to a spiritual God because we can't see him, we can't hear him and touch him and give him a hug and stuff like that, right? Only people 2,000 years ago could actually do that with Jesus, and they only got like about a 30-year shot. Huh?
Oh, like, you can't, like, see or touch or hug your soul.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't touch your heart.
What we've been talking about is the fact that it still doesn't mean it's not there and not real. So one of the first about was Jiminy Cricket the prophet, or the fact that we have a conscience and the fact that we can tell morally designed us to be able to do so. Because the brightest minds in the scientific community can't really explain whether it's physical or philosophical, there we go. Philosophical, like things that we just think about and stuff like that, instead of things that are just about our bodies. We can't really decide where right and wrong comes from. Is it cultural? Yeah, it's a little bit cultural, but also every culture in the world knows it's wrong to kill people. Every culture in the world knows it's wrong to steal and stuff like that. We have an innate sense of right and wrong, of justice and injustice. And the fact that we can understand concepts like that we can't see, I can't hold on to in my conscience, that is all a further evidence that God is there, and that should help us to see him. So,
Was Jimmy Cricket jumping?
he was a cricket. He didn't really jump a whole lot in the movie. He wore a little suit and walked around with Pinocchio.
Yeah, first. Yeah. I don't
Watch Pinocchio on Disney Plus and you'll see what I'm talking about. And then next we talk about getting real and the fact that realizing that God can't be seen physically but still gives us miracles, visions, signs, or prophecy, helps us to see him in the world. So we looked at the Bible and we talked about when John had the revelation he had when he wrote the book of Revelation. The fact that he didn't see God actually walk up to him and tell him things, they showed him visions, just like Abraham. Abraham lived a long time and only saw God about 7 times in his life. Interact with him either through a vision or through an angel. Still living that long, just those simple moments help him hold on to him. And then lastly, we talked on Wednesday, we talked about getting in shape with Jesus, or the fact that exercising our physical bodies is very similar when it comes to exercising our spiritual side. So for example, if I wanted to get in shape, if I wanted to be able to run 5 miles, I start practicing at it. My body right now can't do that. But if I work at it a little bit every day, if I lift weights, if I eat right, and I start jogging and stuff like that, eventually my body will get more and more in shape, and I'll be able to do better stuff. The same principle applies to spiritual matters. If I'm not seeing God in my life regularly, well, how much am I praying? If I'm not praying a whole lot, well, it's no wonder that I don't see him because I don't talk to him ever. If I don't ever read my Bible and I don't understand truths behind Scripture, well, it's again, no wonder I don't see God a whole lot because I'm not spending the practice time with it. I'm not going through the motions. I'm not learning and growing. And so I can't fairly say, well, I don't see God if I'm not actually doing anything about it, right? Just like I can't say, well, I'm out of shape, but that's just because of the way I was born. I was born fat. No, I mean, nobody can say that, right? We get fat by eating bad stuff and being inactive. We can get spiritually fat too by being inactive and not following
You
after
can get
God.
fat by eating fat.
What? No, it doesn't work that way.
It doesn't go.
Pretty much calories in general. Energy that is stored in your body that you don't use makes you fat. And that doesn't mean just fat. That can be fat, protein, carbs, all that stuff. So,
It's usually carbs.
usually carbs. Carbs are pretty filling. So the last thing we're going to talk about is special things that we especially miss. I like using nifty little titles like that. So what I'm talking about is about special things. I mean, like everyday occurrences that maybe go past us that we don't even really recognize or really let sink in. And the fact that the world we exist in, the bodies we have, or the things and the animals and the plants on this world point back to God and point back to how they were designed. And that's another way of seeing God in our day-to-day lives. So what parts of the world we live in help us see God in creation? When you look out, like when you wake up this morning, or you're walking through the woods, or you're hanging out with family or something like that, what have y'all seen in the physical world that remind you that God exists?
Basically my family and
Like, be specific then. What do you mean?
like because
That's okay.
that's how it explains.
Yeah.
I'd say birds or animals or something because we didn't create that. We don't have the ability to create that. Other people that.
Anybody else?
So yesterday, we were playing hide and seek at the house that we're building.
Yeah.
And there are so many like thorns,
Inside the house?
like in the woods.
Oh, okay.
You made it sound like you were playing hide and seek while they were doing the construction of the house.
No, no one was there. No, nobody was there, so we couldn't go in the house. But we played outside in the woods, and there are so many thorns.
Yeah.
They're huge, and they hurt so bad.
Yep. And how did that remind you of God?
I don't know. I wish God did not create them.
Well, technically, he did and he didn't. Part of a lot of that stuff and things like that is because of what we've done in the world. Because God cursed the planet when Adam and Eve fell. And then if you read first, Genesis chapter 3 and 4, talks about that he says to Adam, hey, because of your sin, because of what you've done, the ground is now, and you're not even listening, and I'm answering your question. I was answering your question, and you stopped paying attention. So he cursed the ground, and so thorns and stuff like that, and bad things started to come from the earth because of the curse that we put on. Huh?
Snakes.
Well, and the fun thing to think about is, okay, this is getting a little bit off topic, but just to kind of blow your mind a little bit, because this is a question I can't answer, right? All right. So if death entered the world when we sinned, right? Before we sinned, death didn't exist, because death is the ultimate penalty for our sin. Death is the ultimate reason, the ultimate separation from God, and the fact that we did something wrong. If that's the case, were there things like spiders before the fall?
Yeah.
And if they were, did they still eat bugs, or what did they do? Because if death didn't actually enter the world until Adam and Eve sinned, that meant that spiders didn't eat other bugs. That means that lions didn't eat antelope, right? Because that would be death.
They just do.
See, it's a fun thing to think about, right? I know, right?
Oh, wait. But then you get into the part where it says God told them that they can only eat the fruits of those trees.
Uh-huh.
But then what he didn't be like, let's say it's an apple that they're eating.
Yeah.
Would they eat air?
Food for the apple, because it's
Yes and no, I suppose, but the tree itself is alive, the apple. Well, yeah, I see what you're talking about. Well, they did, because Adam, like you just said, God gave them every fruit and green.
He told them to eat from every tree but that one in the middle.
Yeah, knowledge of good and evil.
Put a caution sign around it, say do not eat.
Yeah.
If you do, then
Yeah, it's all animals.
burn us all.
But anyway, so just a random thought to think about. Like, that's something that I pondered before that I can't really answer. I don't know. And the Bible's not very specific on it, so I don't think we'll ever know until we see Jesus face to face. But anyway, so I want to talk about three different, there he is. Let's start that over. I want to talk about three different areas where these are just some simple examples of everyday things that we take for granted that actually scream design. And what I mean by design is they actually scream the fact that they were made on purpose, which shows us God, right? Because if you see, like the old example is a wristwatch, right? There's this wristwatch. This watch implies that somebody designed it, right? Because this watch is all complicated and everything. Somebody had to program it, somebody had to build it, somebody had to design it. Somebody had to make this. So the fact that this exists at all proves that somebody was behind building it. So when we look at the world and we look at complexity in nature and stuff like that, it implies that somebody made it. Because to just say this stuff came about randomly by chance, when we get to certain points, really doesn't make a lot of sense. And some of that stuff is what we're going to talk about. So cosmic stuff, first of all. Cosmic meaning just the universe in general, right? So if you say the cosmos, you're talking about the entire universe. Number one, Earth's perfect spot.
I know, we're talking about the Goldilocks zone.
So, have you ever thought about the fact of how amazing it is that we actually even can live on this planet? Right? There are so many things, especially when looking at the way the solar system is made, the particular type of gases and stuff that are on this planet, that we wouldn't be able to live here unless a lot of different things fell into place. Even people that are atheists, like this guy named Paul Davies, says everyone agrees that the universe looks as if it was designed for life. So it's kind of finely tuned to us being here. And what I'm talking about, first of all, is Earth's relationship to the sun, right? We take this for granted. The sun comes up and goes down every day, right? As we orbit around the planet, as we orbit around the star. Yes.
So wait, if there was Earth was the only planet that we could live on, what about all the other planets?
What do you mean?
Like Saturn, Mars, Jupiter.
Well, we couldn't live on those.
So Saturn and Jupiter are gas giants, so they're like giant gas balls, so
Yeah.
they just float right through that.
Mhm.
Well, what
I
about
mean, you wouldn't
Mars?
float right through
Mars.
it, you know, it has a core and
Well, then
everything.
why would God create them?
Huh? I'm not sure why. But Earth orbits the sun within a tight habitable zone that is statistically unlikely for a planet. So think about this. If the Earth was ever so slightly further away from the sun, the cycle, well, simply the cycle of water wouldn't happen. Like if we were further away from the sun, water would freeze and it would just stay frozen. If we were a little bit closer to the sun, water would evaporate instantly and you'd never have liquid water because the planet would be either too hot or too cold. But somehow our planet is right in the perfect zone where water can be in all three forms. And so we can have weather, we can have precipitation, we can have an atmosphere and stuff like that. If the Earth was slightly bigger, we would have too much gravity, you know, the thing that actually holds us down on this planet. Not only does it hold us down, but it holds down all the other gases that are in our atmosphere. And if Earth was slightly heavier or more dense and had more gravity, more gases would come in like ammonia and methane, and we wouldn't be able to breathe. Ammonia and methane are very, very deadly to life. The gas giants she was talking about are very rich in ammonia and methane, like Saturn and Jupiter. So just that right there, I can go on and on and on about details about just how perfect it is that our Earth is where it is. That's why it's so hard for scientists, even though there's billions of other stars in the galaxies, right? There's so many options. It's so hard to find a planet that might be able to support life, to be so perfect. And that is one way that we can see God in the fact that he's scientifically impossible that it could not happen. Number two is that math actually makes sense. Now, who in here, whose favorite subject is math? Really?
Not long.
Well, the thing is, we're all dyslexic.
Yeah, until you
So that helps you with what is being just.
I don't know.
They can't read books.
Yeah.
Like that's kind of easy to say, but it's just,
Yeah.
they understand
Okay.
it better.
Well, but that works. Okay, so did y'all realize that the fact that math makes sense actually doesn't make a whole lot of sense? There is no reason that our universe should have order to it at all. So take the Big Bang, for example. The Big Bang, y'all know what the Big Bang is, right?
Yes.
What is the Big Bang? Can somebody explain it to us
It's a
simply?
show.
No, not the Big Bang Theory. What is the Big Bang Theory, not the show? What is that? Tucker.
like stuff is
So the Big Bang Theory is essentially long ago, there was a cloud of gases. And so eventually they got compressed enough and exploded all over the place. And that's what we know as our galaxies today.
Yes,
And then the same process is for like making stars and all that stuff.
because eventually all that stuff that is exploded, just imagine an explosion, what happens? Everything shoots out in every different direction, right? Well, that's what scientists think a lot about what happened at the beginning of the universe. They think that everything started as only no bigger than the tip of a pin, All the matter and everything that was all in the universe was that compressed and that small, and then for some reason that nobody can explain, it explodes. Then it goes out to all this stuff. Now, this theory has come under a lot of attack by stuff called the multiverse theory, and I know that Tucker knows what I'm talking about, but we'll get into that later. But now that it's expanded, and most scientists are like, okay, so the Big Bang Theory happened, but the problem is there's this principle in physics that says that as stuff expands out, it reaches an equilibrium, right? If I were to take some water right here, and I were to pour like a bunch of gallons of water on the floor, what would happen?
Spread out.
It would spread out. It wouldn't all just sit right here in this pool right here. It would spread out as far as it could, as evenly as it could, so that the water, the depth of the water here would be the same over there, same over there, and same over there. The same principle applies to physics. It says that if something expands like that in a giant vacuum-like space, it will take up even space until no more space to be left. But that's not what happened. What happened is stuff condensed, like planets. The scientist says, his name is Roger Penrose from Oxford University, says the odds against an ordered universe are pretty high, but the odds against a universe to the 10th to the 123rd power, which it has so many zeros, it's a 1 with so many zeros behind it, it would take trillion years to actually even write the number, literally. I was going to show you, I was actually going to put all the zeros on the board and like show you how big this number is, like way beyond getting hit by lightning, way beyond winning the lottery. Extremely improbable the fact that the universe exists how it does. But physically, we cannot put that many zeros on the board. It would actually take me years upon years upon years to write out that many zeros.
It's bigger than Google.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
Come on now. It is impossibly large. You can't imagine it.
Well, Google's a number then.
No, Google's not a number. Googleplex is a number, but Googleplex is not a number specifically. It just means that numbers keep going. It's essentially saying infinity in a different way.
I like the big user.
Scientists such as Richard Dawkins and Steven Weinberg agree that the only possible answer is either a creator made everything or the multiverse theory is correct, which says that there's so many infinite number of universes that ours just happen to come about.
Doctor Strange.
Doctor Strange, yeah, think Doctor Strange. That. So the fact that our world makes sense. It does kind of explain it in a better way to help us understand. Because guys, I am not a mathematician. I can't explain it. I don't know exactly how that theory works, but Doctor Strange and the fact that he can go through all these different universes and stuff, that's kind of what the multiverse theory is saying. That there's an infinite number of universes. Yeah, but then the problem becomes, well, what is creating all the universes? So it's all math. And anyway, what I want y'all to get from that is the fact that this stuff that we can even talk about it sensibly. That 2 + 2 = 4, it will always equal 4. That doesn't necessarily always, that doesn't have to be true, and yet it is. So why is it true? Because the world was made with order. Number 3, the properties of light. This one's pretty simple. The light you see right now, scientists can't exactly nail down exactly what it is. It behaves in 2 different ways. It behaves like a wave, so like radio waves and stuff like that, but it also behaves like particles. Kind of like, think little bits of things coming out of the light that shoot out of energy, of electrons and stuff like that. Scientists study light and have studied light for ages, and they still can't nail down exactly why light behaves like both a wave and like a particle. They've tried so many different times to understand this, and they just can't. I think it's funny that the way that we understand the world and we put so much trust. I can tell y'all are bored to tears talking about this, but I think this stuff is cool. So I'm not knocking science at all. I think it's crazy that even as smart as we are, we can't explain something as simple as light. We can't fully understand it. We can't fully understand why it behaves the way it does. And that's just a mystery, right? Light is also, this isn't even on the board, light has a constant speed, right? It moves to us pretty well instantly. And for the longest time, scientists like Einstein made the time wrong. For the longest time, they said that was the fastest anything could go was the speed of light. Well, now we're seeing all sorts of stuff in the universe that is moving faster than the speed of light. And to our understanding of how math and physics work, that shouldn't be possible. So all the stuff we know, without a shadow of a doubt, that we thought were like unbreakable laws, are breaking. And that's just crazy, right? All this stuff we feel like we understand, are like, oh, math is always going to be the same. Light's always going to be the same. And now we're seeing evidence that It's not. So we have to rethink all of our stuff again. Guys, not to just, like I said, I like science, but what book do we read constantly that has never changed? Yes. That hasn't been proven false, has always been true. And yet over the thousands of years that we've had God's revelation, we keep trying to understand the world. We keep trying to do this. We keep trying to make progress, and progress is great. But we have to be humble about our progress and realize that the stuff I know beyond a shadow of a doubt doesn't mean I actually know what's really going on. Because if we can't explain something simple like life, what makes me think that I should trust that scientists say that a God doesn't exist because I can't see it? Well, dude, you can't even explain why that light bulb works the way it does. So shut up. Anyway.
Like, to us, the light is like just staying still, but
all this should point us back to realize, like, wow, how amazing is our Creator that He made something like this that we can't understand. But if I already can't explain stuff that I see every day, if I go home and switch on a light switch and I can't tell exactly what that is it really that hard for me to put my trust and faith in God and say, well, I don't really know how that works, God, but I see this working, how you made it, so I guess I can take that step and say, I'll trust it. But there's more. Let's talk about plants. Plant pandemonium. And I got some pretty facts about plants that I think are totally cool. So first of all, seeds germinating. Guys, what does germinating mean? Growing, yeah. Essentially, I put a seed in the ground and it sprouts and it grows. Has anybody ever thought about how the heck does that seed know that, first of all, it was in a bag? Why didn't it sprout in the bag? It doesn't have a brain, it doesn't think. It doesn't know oh, you put me in some dirt and watered me. All right, I'm good, yay.
But there's no light in the back.
Okay, there's no light, there's no dirt, and all that. But how does a seed that doesn't have thoughts, does a plant think?
No.
Then how does a plant know when it's in the right conditions to grow?
Well, it's like we have to have the right conditions to live, so we have to have food and light and stuff. We don't have to have
To do that. How does your body instinctively know
We
to
have a
grow?
mind to know.
Yeah, we have a mind, but plants don't. Like, I know that I need to eat food, and so I go and I eat food. The plant doesn't know that. It doesn't have a brain. You have a brain, it doesn't. The plant is just a bunch of cells.
I hope it's not a group.
It's not group. This is nifty because scientists did a study, and they said in the title, seeds may use tiny brains to decide when to germinate. But what they're talking about is that it suggests that plant seeds use tiny brains to help them decide whether it's time to break dormancy or to actually start growing. The brains aren't physically similar to the human. Instead, the seed's control center possess information like brains do. They use bundles of specialized cells to process hormones to tell them when it's prime time and they should sprout. So they have these chemicals in them, or these like special clump of cells that can recognize when conditions are correct. So you're gonna tell me that we're not gonna break this conversation down into evolution versus creation. I don't want to get into that fight. But what all scientists that say there is no God and only embrace evolutionary theory say that happened by coincidence, that happened by accident. You're saying that plants learned how to grow accidentally, somehow. Somehow these cells, these specialized cells that aren't in the entire seed, they're in like one spot. But these specialized cells just happen to come on the ground, and then seeds worked. Well, what happened to all the seeds before that? They just sprouted willy-nilly? How'd they even know to sprout at all? How does a plant know to grow roots, and then grow a trunk, and then grow leaves, and then grow a flower, and then grow fruit? How the heck does it know that? It either figured it all out by accident, or it was designed by somebody to do it. Just like my watch. My watch is super complicated. Well, guess what? Life is super complicated too. And we look outside and like, it's super easy, bless you, for me to go to Lowe's and buy a pansy, put it in the windowsill, and I water it, and it grows, and it has a flower and everything. And I don't think about the fact that all the complexity that had to happen for that to even do that. For the plant to know how to work.
That's crazy.
Yeah, right? It gets better. Because this is one of the ones I took a picture of before. Flowers that face the sun. Sometimes you'll see these out in the fields, especially in the spring and the summer. There's these little yellow flowers that they close at night, they open in the morning, and the trippy thing is they're facing east. And then they turn and face west when the sun sets.
It wants
Yeah.
facing the sun.
How does it know, how does a plant without eyes, without a brain, without muscles, turn and move like it's thinking?
It's
Like it
Groot.
knows.
It's Groot in the sky.
That kind of stuff points out the fact that it's designed to me. Because you know how those plants actually do that? You know how they turn? Because they don't have muscles. Do you know how they turn? How?
They move water around so that so the cells on one side of the stem will shrink up and they'll turn. And then they'll put the water on the other side of the plant and then they expand so that it looks like it's turning.
Yeah, more specifically, it grows on one side
Yeah.
and doesn't grow on the other. So imagine if my right leg were to grow and my left leg weren't, right? I would eventually turn because my one leg is bigger and longer. That's how plants do that. That's how they open and close. Like a muscle, but not. They're just, how does the plant know to grow more cells here so it can follow the sun? How the heck can it see the sun in the first place? It just senses it through photosynthesis. It senses that warmth is there somehow. This article that I have on sunflowers, they can't explain how they do it. They just say, like simply, oh, it can be explained by rhythm. Behavioral changes are tied to an internal clock that humans also have, and they follow a 24-hour cycle. They just like say it nonchalantly, like, oh, well, just like we have internal clocks with plants. They just know, over 24 hours the sun is moving and so the plant moves. But you didn't answer anything. How does it know that? You just take that for granted. Like, the plant just knows. Oh, okay, the plant just knows. You just thought one day, like, it'd be better if I followed the sun because I'm a plant and photosynthesis helps me, right? Because I need sunlight to grow and stuff like that. Yes.
But how do they think, oh, there's warmth right there?
Yeah. It doesn't have feelings. It's not like if I chop a tree down, it screams in pain,
But then,
right?
yeah.
That would be horrible. Wouldn't that be grotesque if I was chopping wood?
You know those plants that like eat things?
Yeah. Oh, that Venus flytraps and stuff.
Yeah, how do they move?
How do they know flies are there?
They have sensors, and somehow that sensor triggers that action.
And then did you know Venus actually sees?
It's just like
What?
the human body. How
Venus
does
kind
the
of
cells
sees
know how to
because you
work?
can grow a plant out of it.
Oh yeah, Venus is seed. Yeah.
So it's just like the human body. How does the cells know how to work?
Exactly. My brain, right, doesn't tell my individual cells what exactly to do. It doesn't tell them like, hey, I want you to keep replicating because that cell that died on your thumb, you need to replace that. No, other cells just do that. And somehow they know, oh, I'm a thumb cell. I should grow like a thumb. How do they know this? It's because it's in the DNA that was designed when God created it. All this should point us back to him and go like, wow, that's trippy. That's crazy. I don't know how you do that, God. I don't know how you built it in there that knows. But that's amazing. Lastly, how water moves through plants is pretty incredible. Because how does blood move through us?
The heart pumping.
The heart pumps, right? We have a heart, it beats, it pumps blood throughout our system, right? Plants don't have hearts. So how does this work?
How do they live? Because they don't have hearts, they don't have.
Huh?
brains.
Okay, but how does that work?
You don't need it.
Yeah. The way that plants circulate water is pretty much a one-way direction. And it works similar to how if you were to suck on a straw. So the water starts in the root. The roots absorb water through like little pores and through osmosis and stuff like that. And then it starts moving its way up the plant through something called xylem, which is essentially like a tube on the inside of the plant. And it moves up like that because there's little holes called stoma on the leaves. Have y'all ever sat underneath a big tree, especially in the summer or something like that, and felt stuff drip on you?
Yeah.
That literally is the tree dripping water on you. Because trees on the underside of their leaves have these little pores. Just like you have pores on your skin. You know, if you ever sat in the bathroom and like popped red or blackheads, whiteheads and stuff like that, you have pores on your face. Nobody's ever done that before. I'm the only one. Just like we have pores, plants have pores. They have especially a lot on the underside of their leaves. And that little bit of air that moves from the roots all the way up the stem into the leaves, that creates just a little bit of suction. Just like if you were to siphon gas out of like a car that's broken down or something like that, or to suck soda out of a straw. The same principle works with plants. How did that develop accidentally? Because the root would have to know what the stem was doing, and the stem would have to know what the branch is doing, and the branch would have to know what the leaf is doing. It's not like it all just happened at once. According to evolutionary theory, that happened by accident. That somehow plants figured this out on their own. All the more reason for us to look at design in the world and go, wow, okay, I might not be able to see God physically, but I can see that. Because that's trippy. To say that that just happened. Last but not least, let's talk about animals. Oh, we're right on the edge of time, so I'm going to breeze through these. What came first, the heart or the blood? I don't know. Do y'all ever think about the fact that so many things in our bodies, our physical human bodies, would not work without the other, right? My eyes don't actually see anything, my brain does. And so the way that I can understand the world is light enters my eyes and then my brain understands it. Well, if my eyes worked differently or if my brain worked differently, that wouldn't work. What came first, the heart or the blood? I don't know, right? That's why it's probably created, because if my blood does not work, like if your heart stops, what happens?
You die.
You die. Because the oxygen is not getting to the rest of your body, your cells and your organs break down, your brain stops working because it stops getting oxygen. And so my heart needs to be there, but also my heart wouldn't just pump nothing. If my blood wasn't there, my heart beating its heart out wouldn't do anything. It wouldn't do any good. It's beating air, right? I would still die. So then one couldn't come before the other. They both have to exist at the exact same time. Female and male, both independent, right? I exist without another female, but I can't procreate. I can't make more people without a female, just like females can't make more people without males. How did we both develop independently and yet work together so well? That doesn't make any sense. And the last, bird migration. Y'all know how birds migrate?
They fly?
Well, they fly. But how can birds travel hundreds and even sometimes thousands of miles and make it to the same spot without GPS? They don't have like a map.
They're like bats and dolphins.
They have brains.
Well, they have
They're
brains.
not stupid. It's their natural thing.
Okay, but if I gave you a map, Shelby, and told you to get to New York somehow, I don't know if you could even do that. Can you? Can you really map that well?
If you gave me a map, I could.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or I could ask.
Plus, we're also talking about birds that have a brain this big. Their cognitive abilities are not what you are.
They remember.
But the trippy thing is, what I'm getting at is the fact that they migrate by magnetic fields. Their brains, they have a little something in there, I forget what it's called, but they can detect the Earth's magnetic field. The reason that a compass points north and south, that magnetic field, birds use that to migrate thousands of miles. And they end up in the same spot all the time. So you're telling me that that happened by accident too? That birds were like, dude, I hate the winter up north, it's freaking cold. I want to go down south. And so they figured out how to get there once. But then how the heck is it going to get back? It's a bird, right? This, like I said, I'm not talking about a person. This is an animal that reacts on instinct. It doesn't really think about that kind of thing. It just happens.
It's like they have two different homes. Like, because we always make it back home because
It's like,
Wow, we really ran out of time, guys. I'm so sorry. But anyway, last but not least, I just want to say that the reason this stuff exists in the world is because God designed it that way, right? Whether you want to say that he set evolution in motion and that's how it got here, and he guided it somehow, or he designed it this way from the beginning, either way, God is behind it. And so this is the last way that I would offer to y'all that we could see God daily, is just in the world around us, because there's a lot of unexplainable stuff that we don't even start to notice. All right, let's pray real quick and we'll be dismissed. Jesus, Lord, I thank you so much for revealing this kind of stuff to us, God, and helping us to see you in a world where we can't see the spiritual. Lord, help us to wrap our minds around these kind of things, Lord, and it might be a further anchor for us when it comes to sharing our faith and holding the faith in you in the first place. Jesus, in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Mr. President.
Sorry.